So I hope it is in the presentation mode already, and we can begin with this lecture today. So we have been studying the morphology of flowering plants. This is lecture number 4 for the same. We have studied a little bit up till the flower. So the introduction for the flower part of this particular segment was done in the previous lecture. We'll continue from there on. For those who are new, I would like to briefly introduce myself. So, I am Arveen Kaur. I am a PhD scholar at Department of Biological Sciences and Bioengineering at IIT Kanpur. And along with my own institute, my fellowship funding agency, that is PMRF, and SATHEE, we are bringing this lecture series, and this is the current chapter that we are discussing, morphology of flowering plants, and I hope it is useful for you people also. So we'll briefly go through a recap as to what we have already done with respect to this chapter, right? So this was what we did in lecture 1. So this current lecture is actually lecture number 4. In the first lecture, what we studied was what first we briefly talked about the five kingdom classification, where in five kingdom classification does the angiosperms or the flowering plant lie, what exactly are flowering plants or angiosperms. Then we discussed certain characteristics of the angiosperms, such as them containing a seed, and the seed is also always encapsulated, so it is protected by a flower or a fruit, right? So these were certain characteristics. Then we first started a discussion with with the discussion of the root system, right? So we did discuss that whatever part of the plant that is growing below the soil and is arising from the radicle, right, is known as the root system. And yeah, in monocot and dicot plants, the type of root system is varying depending on whether the primary root is going and forming multiple like is the one that is going forward and only root hair are directly coming out of it, or whether the primary root is very short and the secondary and tertiary roots are forming out of it. So that is what is taproot and fibrous root respectively. Then we studied regions of roots, right? The root cap, the region of meristematic activity, region of elongation, region of maturation that contains root hair, etc. And we studied certain modifications of roots, that is adventitious roots, prop roots, stilt roots, and pneumatophores. In which case, roots were not just provide absorbing water and nutrition from the soil, but they were also either providing support to the plant, or they were using, like roots were being used for absorbing air, oxygen from the environment, etc. Sorry. Next we move on to the shoot system, right? So shoot system was a part of the plant that was above the soil, and it was arising from the plumule, right? Plumule in the leaf. In the shoot system, the first character that we studied was the stem, right? And we studied these terminology with respect to the stem. That is the nodes, where leaves are arising. It denotes the distance between two nodes, terminal and axillary buds, right? If it is at the tip of the thereafter, we did study a little about leaf in the second lecture, right? We discussed the parts of the leaf, such as the leaf base, the stipule, which is a small stem-like structure that is actually holding it away from the main stem, right? The petiole. Sorry, that is a petiole, the small stem. Stipule is a small a leaf that is coming out of the base, the point of attachment of the petiole and leaf base to the stem. That small leafy structure is stipule, right? Stipule. Then there's the lamina, which is basically the main part of the leaf, right? The face of the leaf, kind of. Then we study different kinds of venulation patterns, that is how veins are running across these leaves, such as reticulate or parallel venation. Yeah. So reticulate being a network kind of veins in the lamina of the leaf, and parallel was if the veins are not crossing each other and they are running kind of straight towards the tip of the leaf lamina, it is known as parallel, right? Then later we also discussed types of leaves. We discussed a phyllotaxy, that is how are these leaves arranged, right? Whether they are alternate, like one leaf will, one node is over here, the other is over here, then another over here, another over here. So that was phyllotaxy, alternate, right? Opposite was when two nodes are on side of one another, or from one single node, two leaves are arising, right? Which are opposite to one another. So that was opposite, like this, right? And word was like if there is one node and a bunch of leaves are arising from that, so that was word. Then we did study modifications of leaves as well, right? These included modifications such as, again, tendril formation or thorns, or leaves that would support the plant, etc. Right? Then we discussed inflorescence and what is basically inflorescence. So inflorescence was basically the pattern of arrangement of flowers in a plant, right? So there were two types of inflorescence that we discussed. One was racemose, the other was cymose, right? Then we actually came to what inflorescence was discussing about, which was flower, right? Pattern of arrangement of flower was inflorescence, and then we discussed about flower, right? So what is a flower? It is a reproductive part of a plant, right? It consists of different whorls. There are four main whorls. These are those sepals, petals, and rhocium, gynoecium, and we will discuss in depth about these words today in today's lecture, right? Then we also discussed about perianth, right? So perianth was one of the modification wherein the petal and sepal was fused, right? So this new wall or this new kind of modification was known as perianth. Then we also discussed about symmetry of a flower, right? So there, if a flower is symmetric, a flower could also be asymmetric. But if it is symmetric, there are two types of symmetry that are generally seen. One is zygomorphic and the other is actinomorphic. So we will pick up again from this very place, right? So we were talking about the symmetry of the flower. Firstly, I would like to point out that not all flowers are symmetric, right? There could be some flowers that are asymmetric altogether. If there is symmetry in flower, it could either be zygomorphic, in which case what will happen is that there will only be one plane across which if we divide the plant, it will be bilaterally symmetrical, right? Or there will be two equal halves. So over here in this case, this is that plane, right? Actinomorphic or radial symmetry means that if we draw any line across this, any straight line across this flower, it will divide it into two equal halves, right? So that is what is known as actinomorphic or radial symmetry. So yeah, so let us discuss it one by one. So, as I said, zygomorphic, when it can be divided into two similar halves only in one particular vertical plane, it is known as zygomorphic, right? Examples of zygomorphic plants are pea, woolmoher, bean, cassia, violet, etc., right? And then actinomorphic, when a flower can be divided into two equal radial halves in any radial plane passing through the center, right? So it could either be this way or this way or this way or this way, right? It is said to be actinomorphic. Examples of actinomorphic symmetry are mustard, datura, chili, cranesbill, etc. Right? Then, as I said, a flag could also be asymmetric, right? In this case, any plane of symmetry is not visible, right? If I, draw a plane like this, also the petals are not of equal length. So then again, it will not be symmetrical. If I draw it from here, again, it will not be symmetrical. So that is possible. Flower is asymmetric or irregular if it cannot be divided into two similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center. Example, canna, right? Right. So, let us discuss a little more about the flower, right? Flower can also be trimerous, tetramerous or pentamerous when the floral appendages are in multiples of 3, 4, or 5 respectively. So what do you mean by this? Trimerous means multiple of 3. Tetramerous multiple of 4. Pentamerous multiple of 5. Right? So these are certain examples that I visually represent this that I have given over here. This, for example, is trimerous, right? So it has 3 sepals, 3 petals, right? And so what will happen is that the floral appendages of sepals, petals, the whorls inside it will be in multiples of 3, right? So this is trimerous, right? In this case, you can see how many sepals, how many petals are there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? 6 petals are there, meaning again it is trimerous because it is a multiple of 3. Right? It is not a multiple of 4, it's not a multiple of 5. So both this and this are trimerous plants. Similarly, I would invite you to spot tetramerous and pentamerous plants. Right? So, for example, the first obvious one is this, right? So, this is obviously tetramerous, right? It has 4 whorls, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 petals are there, so it is tetramerous, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Multiple of 4, right? So, these are both tetramerous. While this yellow one has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is 5 petals. And see, other words also will be in that order only, right? So it has 5 androsia also, right? Over here, it had maybe 6 androsia, right? If it had 3, this it had 6 androsia. Over here also, it had 6 androsia, right? So most of the words will comply with this. So this was pentamerous, and even this one has 10 petals, right? So it is also pentamerous, right? Multiple of 5. So I hope you are clear with what does trimerous, tetramerous, and pentamerous mean, right? Now, uh, before going further, let us also go through some more terms that were given in your book, right? So flowers, there were 2 terms that were given, which were bracteate and ebracteate, right? So what does it mean? Bracteate means something that has a bract. Ebracteate, something that does not have a bract, right? Lacking a bract. For example, nucleated, something that has a nucleus. Enucleated, something that lacks a nucleus, right? So similar kind of thing is seen in this, like this is how terminology is actually given, right? So over here, flowers with bracts reduced or reduced leaves found at the base of the pedicel are called bracteate, right? And those without bracts are called ebracteate, right? So this is what a bract looks like, right? One second. Yeah. So if this is a plant, if this is a flower, right, this is a stem. At the base or the pedicel, a small leaf is present. It is not a leaf per se, but it is a small leaf at the origin of the flower from the stem, right? This small leaf or reduced leaf is known as a bract, right? So in this case, you can see there are such small leaves that are present. So these in this plant, bract is there, and in this plant, such small leaves are not present where the flower is arising. So it is ebracteate, right? So it is lacking a bract. Okay. Similarly, a few more, interesting terminologies to deal with, right? So, based on the position of the calyx, corolla, and androecium, right? So, there are 4 ones. The outermost is calyx. After that is corolla. After that is androecium, and inside that is gynoecium, right? So, over here we are talking about the outer 3 words, right? So, based on the position of the calyx, corolla, and androecium in respect of the ovary on the thalamus, right? So ovary, which is in a part of that gynoecium, right? So the outer three walls, their arrangement with respect to the innermost one, gynoecium, right, or ovary or the thalamus, the flowers are described as either hypogynous, this one, or perigynous, like this, or epigynous, like this, right? So let us discuss in detail what each one of these means, right? Yeah. So, yeah, when we talk about a hypogynous flower, what happens is in the hypogynous flower, gynoecium occupies the highest position, right? So, this is the gynoecium, right? You can see that it is at the highest position, right? Sepal is attached over here, petal is attached on top of it, and roscium is attached on top of that. But in the middle, at the topmost area, is what? It is the gynoecium, right? So, yeah, while the other parts are situated below it, right? We have seen that just now. So, the ovary is said to be the superior, right? Example of such kind of an arrangement, that is hypogynous flower, is seen in brinjal, China rose, and mustard. Right? So these are three examples of hypogynous flowers. Now let us talk about perigynous. Sorry. So in perigynous, what is happening? If the gynoecium is situated in the center and other parts of the flower are located on the rim of the thalamus, almost at the same level, it is called perigynous, right? So this is the gynoecium, right? Sorry. This is the gynoecium, right? And this is the gynoecium, right? It is easier to understand in this yellow one than in this blue one. So first we'll look at only the yellow figure, right? So in the yellow figure, what is happening? This is the thalamus, right? Look at the level of arrangement of sepal, petal, and roscium and thalamus. It is almost similar, right? Almost at the same plane, not exactly at the same plane, but almost at the same plane. Similarly, over here also, see the thalamus is ending over here, and the other walls are almost at the same plane as that, right? So, both these conditions are known as perigynous, right? Examples of perigynous are plum, rose, and peach, right? And over here, what is happening is that ovary is said to be half inferior, right? So in hypogynous, the ovary was said to be superior. In perigynous, it is said to be half inferior, right? Right. So you can understand where we are leading to, in which direction. The other one, the third one, ovary is actually inferior, right? How come? Because in this epigynous flowers, the margin of the thalamus grows upward, enclosing the ovary completely. Right? Over here, where was the thalamus? It was over here. Right? At the tip of the ovary, only the thalamus was also there. But in epigynous, what is happening? The margin of thalamus is growing upward, enclosing the ovary completely. So ovary is no longer open, right? It is enclosed completely within the thalamus, uh, and getting fused with it, right? The other parts of the flower arise above the ovary, right? So the sepal, petal, and roscium, all of these are now arising above the ovary. Hence, the ovary is said to be inferior, right? So you understand why that is. And it is seen in flowers of guava, cucumber, and reflorets of sunflower also, right? Yeah. So, a recap through this is, there are three kinds of arrangements of the flower, right? With respect to how the outer walls are arranged, with respect to the gynoecium or the innermost walls, it can either be hypogynous, wherein the ovary is superior, as in this case, or it could be perigynous, wherein the ovary is partly inferior or half inferior, as in this case, or it could be epigynous, in which the ovary is actually inferior because all the other walls are arising on top of the ovary, right? So then we come to the parts of the parts of a flower, right? Yeah. So each flower normally has four walls, right? Which are calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. Right. So these are the four worlds of a flower. Right. We are aware of this. So over here you can see the image of a flower. These are the words arranged from outside to inside. So pedicel is the small stem that is on top of which the flower is lying. Then the outermost wall is a calyx. Then this colored petals or corolla, then then androecium after that, and the innermost one is gynoecium, right? So it is calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium, right? So first, let us discuss about calyx, right? What is calyx? What are the kinds of calyx that are seen, right? So when we talk about calyx, it is actually the outermost wall of the flower, right? So we have seen that, right? It is just on top of the pedicel. The outermost wall of the flower is the calyx, and the members are called sepals, right? So this green colored member, the wall is called calyx, but the actual structure in the calyx is known as sepal, right? The green colored leaf-like structures that we see on the base of the flower or on the tip of the fruit, it is known as sepals, right? So generally, sepals are green and leaf-like and protect the flower in bud stage, right? So what is the use of a sepal? You would have seen, for example, a rose bud or any other flower bud, right? So what happens is when it is in the bud stage, it looks green, right? Why? Because the sepal is completely encircling it, right? Slowly, when the flower grows from inside and it matures, this flower opens up, and now this green layer that was on top of it, now it becomes the bottommost. Like once the flower is open, now this green layer is over here, right? So it comes at the bottom, right? So what is the main function? To protect the flower in the bud stage, right? We have all seen that. Now the calyx may be either gamosepalous, that is the sepals can be united as is seen over here on the left, right? Or it can be polysepalous, that is the sepals can be free, right? As is seen in this right side figure, right? So that is it for the calyx. Coming on to the next one, which is the most attractive, colorful part of the plant, that is corolla, right? So, corolla, it is composed of petals. So, like we said, calyx is the name of the word. It is composed of sepals. Corolla is again a name of the word. It is composed of petals, right? These petals are usually brightly colored to attract insects for pollination, right? Uh, so we know now why flowers are brightly colored so that insects will be drawn to it, right? Like calyx, corolla may also be either gamopetalous, right? That is, the petals are fused together, as in this case, or polypetalous, that is, the petals are free, right? Yeah. The shape and color of corolla vary greatly in plants. Corolla may be either tubular, right? Or it could be barrel shaped or funnel shaped or wheel shaped, right? So there could be different kinds of shapes of corolla that can be present across the animals, across the plant, the flowering plants, right? So that is it, right? Then we come to androecium, right? Please give me a moment. Yeah, sorry. Uh, yeah, so where was I? Yeah, we had discussed two walls of the flower. One was the calyx, the other was the corolla. Now we come on the first, sexually important wall of the plant, that is androecium. So there are two that are responsible for the sexual reproduction in the plant. Two walls are responsible for that. One is androecium, the other one is the gynoecium. So first we talk about androecium, right? So androecium is composed of stamens, right? Calyx was composed of sepals, corolla was composed of petals, androecium is composed of stamens, right? Then each stamen, which represents the male reproductive organ, consists of a stalk or a filament and an anther, right? So, yeah, these are stamens. Yeah, as I said, it is one of the reproductively important wall of the flower, right? It represents the male reproductive organ, right? So each stamen has what is the composition? It has a stalk, which is also known as a filament, and it has an anther, right? And inside the anther, there are pollen grains, right? Pollen sacs which contain pollen grains, right? So each stamen, which represents the male reproductive organ, consists of a stalk or a filament and an anther. Each anther is usually bilobed, right? You can see that there are two lobes over here, right? So each anther is bilobed. There are two anthers, right? One and two, and each is bilobed. There are two lobes in each, right? And each lobe has two chambers, right? So in this anther, there are two lobes. Each lobe has two chambers. This is one lobe, this is second lobe, is what they are saying. And in this one lobe, there are two chambers. In the second lobe, there are two chambers, right? And the pollen sacs, right? These chambers are known as pollen sacs. Pollen grains are produced in the pollen sacs, right? So the pollen grains are the human equivalent of plant equivalent of a sperm, right? So it is what is actually taking that male reproductive, like the female reproductive part over here also is an egg or an ovule, right? So the male reproductive product over here is pollen, right? So the pollen grains are produced in these pollen sacs, right? If the stamen is sterile, right? What does it mean? That it will not have pollen grains, right? It will not produce a male reproductive unit, right? It will not have again pollen grains. So such a sterile stamen is actually known as a staminode, right? Instead of stamen, it is known as staminode. Okay. So in case of androecium, the stamens of flowers may either be united with other members, such as petals, or among themselves, right? So either they can be like this, in which they are united with the petals, or they are united among themselves to form a bunch, right? When stamens are attached to petals, they are known as epipetalous, as in case of brinjal, right? Or epiphyllous when they are attached to perianth, as in flowers of lily, right? So these are lily flowers. In this perianth, meaning the sepals and petals are fused together, right? So in that case, if they are attached to the perianth, it is known as epiphyllous. If they are attached to petals, they are known as epipetalous, right? Simple. Then again, there are some more classifications within androecium, right? These are whether they are monoadelphous or diadelphous or polyadelphous. Let us study what each one of this is. So stamens in a flower may either remain free, right? So if they are free of one another, if suppose there are five stamen and this is one, this is one, this is one, this is one, and this is one, right? So they are free of one another. It is known as polyandrous, right? Or they can be united in varying degrees, right? So if they are united, two stamen can go together, two other can go like this, three can go like this, three can go like this, or a bunch can go like this, a bunch can go like this, or all of them can go together also. So they may be united in varying degrees, right? So the stamens may be united into one bunch or one bundle, right? If all of them are united into one bunch, it is known as monoadelphous. That is, there is one group. All the stamens that are present are in a part of this group, right? So they are joined together, right? Like this maybe. So this is monoadelphous. Then what will happen is, I'm getting a call. Please give me a moment. Yes. Uh, Again, if they are united into one bunch, it is known as monoadelphous. Examples of monoadelphous stamens, as seen in China rose, right? If they are present in two bundles, right, it is known as diadelphous. Example of diadelphous is in pea, right? So For example, there were five stamens that were fused together, five stamens that were fused together, and they are not fused like this, but they are lying in two bunches, right? So this, it is forming two groups, right? So this is known as diadelphous, right? It could also be possible that there is only one stamen in this group and five stamen in this group, right? Or two stamen in this group and three stamen in this group. It doesn't have to be equal, right? But there are two groups that are present. So now this is diadelphous, right? Example of diadelphous stamens is seen in T, right? If they are forming more than two bundles, as in case of citrus, it is known as polyadelphous, right? So when are more than two groups seen? Uh, in case of citrus, so it means that two of this, and at the side, then two are here, and they are like as maybe five different groups, right? Two. So five different groups. So these are polyadelphous, right? Then there may be a variation in the length of the filament within a flower, as in salvia and mustard. So it is possible, not all stamens are of the same height, right? It could be possible some stamens are a little low lying, some are a little taller. Like if for example, it is a diadelphous group. So one group is a little shorter, one group is a little taller. It is possible, right? So that is what they are saying, that there could be variation in length. Then we come to the last wall, which is known as gynoecium, right? So, what is gynoecium? It is basically the female reproductive part of the flower, right? It is made up of one or more carpels, right? So again, the sub part or sub unit of gynoecium, or the gynoecium forming unit rather, is a carpel, right? The carpel is this entire thing. The carpel consists of three parts, namely the stigma, the style, and the ovary. Right. So these are the three parts of the carpel. Right. So ovary is the enlarged basal part because it is lying at the base. It is the basal part, and you can see that it is swollen, right? With respect to the entire gynoecium or the other parts, that is stigma and style, ovary is pretty swollen, right? So it is an enlarged basal part on which lies the elongated tube, the style, right? So style is a tube, right? Whatever pollen will come from the male reproductive part will come and sit on the stigma, right? Then it will slowly sink into the style. It will form a tube, and from that tube, it will transfer across this ovary, right? It will come to this end, and it will directly get inserted from here, right? So that is how the fertilization will occur. So if we study that chapter soon, we will understand this also. So, this elongated tube is the style. The style connects the ovary to the stigma, right? So, it is connecting ovary to the stigma. The stigma is usually the tip of the style and is the receptive surface for pollen grains, right? I said pollen grains will come and sit on the stigma. So, it is a receptive surface of a pollen grain. Each ovary bears one or more ovules attached to a flattened cushion like placenta, right? So each ovary will have either one or multiple ovules, right? Which will be attached to a flattened cushion like placenta. This part is a placenta, right? Just a moment. Yeah. So again, there would be different kinds of carpels, right? Depending on how they are in number and how whether they are fused or separate or etc. Right? So when there are more than one carpel is present, right? They may be free, as in case of lotus, like apocarpus, they are free of one another. There are multiple carpels and they are free, right? So this condition is known as apocarpus, or they could be yeah. So as in case of lotus and rose, and they are known as apocarpus, right? As in this case. They are termed as thin carpus when carpels are fused, as in mustard and tomato, right? Over here also there might have been three carpels, but they are fused together, right? So the stigma and style is different, but the ovary part is fused, right? So now this is known as thin carpus. After fertilization, ovules develop into seeds and ovary matures into a fruit, right? So if the pollen successfully comes to the stigma and successfully it is able to fertilize the ovule inside the ovary, what will happen? The ovule will develop into a seed and the ovary will develop into a fruit, right? So now that we have gone through androecium, gynoecium, corolla, calyx, there were two major classifications that we missed in between, right? One is estivation and the second is placentation, right? So estivation was actually a part of corolla and how whorls are arranged in petals are arranged, right? That is known as aestivation. And placentation, which will be how ovules are arranged with respect to placenta, right? So, first, let us go through this particular term, which is known as aestivation, right? So, what is aestivation? The mode of arrangement of sepals or petals in a floral bud with respect to other members of the same whorl is known as estivation, right? So, I hope the uh, definition is self-explanatory, right? So it is mode of arrangement of sepals and petals in a floral bud with respect to other members of the same whorl, right? Uh, right. So the main types of estivation are these four types. The valvate one, the first one that we are seeing, twisted, imbricate, and vexillary. So one by one, we will go through what each one of these are and how they are different from one another. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, first let us go through valvate estimation. So on the left side, in all of these, you will see a diagrammatic representation of sepal and petals right over here. And this kind of line drawing which basically represents how the petals are arranged, right? So over here we can see the petals are arranged such that they are equal in length and they have a gap, a small kind of gap in between of them, right? If they are overlapping, we will see that this one will overlap with this one will overlap with this. So this is a kind of line drawing of how the petals are arranged, right? So you see this in each kind of estimation that we discuss. Okay. So the first one that we want to discuss is the valvate estimation, right? So when the sepals or petals in a whorl just touch one another, right, at the margin without overlapping. So either they have some space in between them or they are just touching, right? Touching like this. They are not overlapping in this way, right? They are just touching, lying side by side. No overlap whatsoever, right? So in that case, it is known as a valvate estivation. Examples of valvate estivation is calotropis, right? It is a flower which has valvate estivation. Then we have twisted estivation. Over here also you can see that there is definite overlap in the sense that every petal is overlapping a little with the other petal. This is overlapping with this, then this will overlap with this. So there is a definite overlap, right? So if one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one, right, and so on, as is seen in China rose and lady's finger and cotton, it is called twisted, right? So you can see over here very nicely what twisted will mean, right? So one margin will overlap with the next, right? Like this, next will overlap with this will overlap with this one, and so on, right? Then there is imbricate estimation. Over here, you can see it looks a little different than what was seen in this twisted estimation, in which in this the same margin is overlapping in each one of them, right? Over here, you can see the overlap is there, but it is not very constant, right, or consistent. So let us see what happens over here. If the margins of sepals or petals overlap one another but not in any particular direction, as is seen in Cassia and Gulmohar, the estivation is imbricate, right? So there is a definite overlap, but it is not in any particular direction per se. In that case, it is known as imbricate estivation, right? Then we come to the final kind of estivation, that is vexillary, right? In this case, what is happening is in pea and bean flowers, there are five petals, right? The largest or the standard one overlaps the two lateral petals, right? This is the largest petal. It will overlap the two lateral petals. That is, the two petals on the side will be overlapped by the largest petal, right? These two lateral petals are known as the wings, which in turn will overlap the two smallest anterior petal, or the keel, right? So there will be two even smaller petals, which are the anterior most petals, which are known as keel, right? That will further be overlapped by these wings or the lateral petals. This type of estivation is known as vexillary or papilionaceous, right? So this is vexillary estivation. Please give me a moment. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm still overcoming congestion, right? Yeah. So in maxillary estivation over here, you will have to, remember a few key terms, such as the largest petal, right, which is known as a standard. It will overlap the two side or lateral petals, which are known as wings, which will further overlap the smallest two petals, which are known as keel, right? And such type of an estivation will be known as maxillary estivation, right? Yeah, yeah. Then we come to the last topic of discussion for the day, which is placentation, right? So in placentation, what happens is, what does placentation mean? It is the arrangement of the ovules within the ovary, right? It is known as placentation. So these are ovules, right? This is ovule. These bulb-like structures over here, all these are ovules. So the arrangement of these ovules within the ovary is known as placentation. The placentation are of different types, namely marginal, axile, parietal, basal, s- uh, central, and free central. Right? So first, let us go through marginal placentation. Right? So what is marginal placentation? What does a margin means? Margin means something that is on the side, right? Something that is on the extreme end is maybe the margin, right? So I passed with a great margin, means there was a lot of gap between the marks required to pass and the marks that I scored, right? Or if you would say that I just passed, right? So that is, you were on the margin. You could have failed or you could have passed. So it is the end or the tip of anything is known as margin, right? So over here, you can see that this is kind of the margin, and the ovules are arranged on the margin, right? Whenever we take a blank page, we will draw a line at one end. Usually we write from left to right. So at the left, we will have a margin, right? We will not start from this extreme. We will draw a margin and hey, this is where we will start, right? So over here, ovules are also arranged at a margin. In marginal placentation, the placenta forms a ridge along the ventral suture of the ovary, and the ovules are born on this ridge, forming two rows, right? As in P. Why is it saying two rows? Because if you open a P, you will see the most of them will have peas on this side also and peas on this side also. So the part of the pea that we eat is actually the ovule part, right? And that is there on both the sides. So it is formed in two rows. It is formed, right? What is axial placentation? When the placenta is axial, right? Axial meaning it is present like this, right? All around it. When the placenta is axial and the ovules are attached to it, right? Ovules are attached to this placenta in a multilocular ovary. right? So there are multiple, subsections in this ovary. This is one subsection, another. So multilocular ovary. The ovules are attached to axial placenta over here, right? So the placentation is said to be axial, right? Example of this is China rose, tomato, lemon, etc. Then we come to parietal placentation. This is what is parietal placentation. So this is actually the placenta, and you can see the ovules develop on the inner walls of the ovary or on the peripheral part, right? So it is a peripheral part or the inner walls of the ovary, right? This is the inner wall of the ovary or this is the peripheral part. Ovary is one chambered, but it becomes two chambered due to formation of false septum. Right? So this is kind of like a false septum. This one is kind of like a false septum. Examples of these are mustard, archimon, etc. Right? Then there is free central placentation. Right? Means that over here in the center the ovules are present. When the ovules are born on the central axis over here and the septa are absent altogether, there are no septum at all. As in case of dianthus and primrose, the placentation is called free central. Then there is this characteristic one, that is basal placentation, in which what is there? The placenta develops at the base of the ovary, right? This is the placenta, and a single ovule. This is a single ovule is attached to it, as in case of sunflower and marigold, right? So there, in these two regions also, what kind of placentation is actually seen? Basal placentation, right? So yeah, that is the end of the topic for today. And in the I think we will have to have one more lecture for this. Let me just stop sharing the screen. Yeah. So I think we will have to have one more lecture to finish off this chapter, right? Then we can discuss whether we want to solve problems with respect to this chapter, or we can switch on to actually studying another chapter, right? So that is it for this particular lecture. We'll have one more lecture and we will wrap up this unit. This particular chapter, that is morphology of flowering plants. For now, that is it. Thank you.